Greetings Internet, it's Monica and Happy New Year! I am so excited to be here on the first day of 2021 bringing you my first video of the year, and today I'm going to be reflecting on the books that I read in 2020, and I'm going to be sharing with you my favorite and most disliked books that I read this past year. Honestly, before putting this video together, I was pretty certain that this was my worst reading year of all time. But now that I've put this group of books together, honestly, I don't think that's the case. Mostly because I have found so many books this year that I just fell so incredibly in love with and that I think are going to stick with me for many, many years. I also really struggled to find books that I didn't like this year. Like, I think I was really good at just how I selected the books that I wanted to read, so that I was pretty much reading only books that I genuinely loved. So that was pretty awesome. I will say that the number of books that I read was far lower than I anticipated or wanted to read. I had set a very lofty goal of reading 100 books this past year, and I got nowhere near that. I read 30 books, so definitely failed that challenge. But you know what? That was an arbitrary number that I gave myself, and I rarely meet my Goodreads goal, so it's not the end of the world. I'm trying not to beat myself up about it. We're just moving on and being thankful that I got to read as much as I did get to read. Before I dive into all of the books though, I did want to announce that I am co-hosting a really exciting read-along. If you don't know, the final book in the Grisha universe is coming out at the end of March, and then the Netflix show, which is an adaptation of the Shadow and Bone trilogy and Six of Crows duology, or it's a Six of Crows prequel, I think, but that is coming out in April, and so in anticipation of that, I am co-hosting a Grisha themed read-along with a bunch of my friends. So they are Blake from Blake the Book Eater, Kaz from Little Book Owl, Jessie from Jessie the Reader, Maureen from Maureen Kiwi, and Red, who used to make booktube videos, but now she does bookish content both on Twitter and Instagram. I will link them all in the description box below. But we are hosting this read-along. Basically, we created a Discord channel that we've called the Ravkin Historical Society. I love getting to pretend like I'm part of a secret society. So we've created that Discord, and then as part of that, we are doing Booked Kingdom, which is the name of the read-along, and we're planning on reading the entire Grisha universe before those big two things come out. So in January, we're reading the Shadow and Bone trilogy, February, the Six of Crows Crooked Kingdom duology, and then in March, we are going to be reading King of Scars, and then the new book Rule of Wolves when it comes out, and then we have the Netflix show. So yeah, it's an aggressive read-along, I understand that, but if you have been wanting a reason to read the series, to read the universe before the show comes out or before the final book comes out, this is your opportunity. You could join us. I will have info and links in the description box below where you can learn more. But yeah, now I'm going to go ahead and dive into my 2020 reading in review. First, I'm going to start off with the books that I did not like in 2020. This is a very, very short list. We're starting off with Sheets by Brenna Thumler. This is a graphic novel that follows two kids, one of whom is a ghost and the other is a girl who is dealing with the grief of losing her mom and also having to maintain her family business. And I really loved the ideas in this graphic novel, honestly, and the art is also stunning. I love the art and the colors. It was just the storytelling element of it that I thought was really underwhelming, and when I think, like, I debated not even putting this in because I don't feel like strongly like, oh, I hated this, but it was probably my most disappointing like graphic novel of the whole year. I don't know, I felt like things just kind of happened in this book and there really wasn't any build up or reasoning for things. It was just like oh, this bad thing is happening, but here's the resolution, you know, versus like actually getting to see people or see the characters work towards that resolution. So it's just really unsatisfying of a graphic novel, you know? So I feel sad putting this in this list, but also if I didn't put this in, my least favorite books would be one book. So moving on to the book that I actually really disliked, and that is Bunny by Mona Awad. This is a book that I really thought I was going to love. We're kind of matching today. I realized that. Listen, I wanted to love this book, and I thought I was going to be honest. Like, it just sounded like everything that I would love. It was compared to like The Craft meets Mean Girls, and I was like, yes, that sounds amazing. And I do think it lives up to that, and I think if this was a film, I think I would love that film. I think it would be absurd and smart and fun, and it would be a total cult classic kind of thing. So 100% would love to see this adapted. However, I just, as a book, I really disliked the writing. Like, all of the ideas in it and the plot points were fine, were great, loved that. However, the writing itself, I just found to be really bad. Or just for me, like, obviously all of this is just my opinion. For me, I just did not like the writing. I found it to be really clunky, really forced, and we just did not get along. Didn't like it. And I just also found it to be kind of cheesy in how it was trying to be weird. Yeah, I don't know. This book was just not for me. I know a lot of people have really liked it this year, and I think that's awesome. I hope that if you pick this book up, you love it, because I want everyone to read books they love. I would definitely love to read more books like this, though, that are more experimental. I feel like if I just found one that had a writing style that I actually was able to connect to, I think I'd like it a lot more. So yeah, unfortunately, my least favorite book of 2020. And the good thing is that that's it as far as books I really disliked in 2020. There are definitely books that I felt, you know, meh about, or that I liked well enough, but that I doubt will stick with me forever, but nothing that I really want to rant about. So I'm actually really happy about that. So now I'm going to talk about the books that I loved, and I've actually ranked these in order. And the last book will be my favorite book of the entire year. So we're going to start off with Sleepwalking by Meg Wolitzer. And this is one that when I first finished it, I knew I loved it, but I wasn't sure how much I loved it until I had time away from it. And I feel like this happens often for me with books, is that I'll finish a book and it'll take like a month or two of like marinating on it before I fully understand how much it meant to me or didn't mean to me. You know, there are books that I read this year that I thought were going to be lifetime favorites that at the end of the year when I was putting this list together, I was like, oh, I've totally forgot about that, you know? And this is one of those books that I have not been able to forget. It has definitely had an impact on just me as a person, and I find myself referencing it in my head when I'm reading other things or experiencing other forms of media or just in my day-to-day life. So I think that's a pretty good indicator of a book being a favorite. This novel follows Claire, who is a student at a New England university, and she is part of the Death Girls, and it's her and basically two of her friends, and they stay up super late every night reciting poetry, and each of them has their own favorite poet: Anne Sexton, Sylvia Plath, and then a made-up poet, Lucy Asher, who is Claire's favorite. So each of their poets have committed suicide, and each of the girls are obsessed with the idea. There definitely is a lot of romanticization of suicide within this book, and not that the book does that, but the characters do that, which I thought was really interesting, because I don't know, I feel like that's not really a thing that I've ever read explored in fiction before, of what it means to be obsessed with death, but not to actually want death. And I feel like this does a really good job of exploring that. For me, reading it, I felt a lot of kinship with Claire. Like, definitely she goes in places that like I would never, but I think anyone who has struggled with sadness and depression, I think you would probably find something relatable in here. Reading this, I could feel like 2013, 2012 me, who spent like all day on Tumblr reblogging sad quotes. Like I felt her feeling seen in this novel, and so I think that was a big reason why I really loved it. Then we have Heartstopper Volume 1 by Alice Oseman, and this is a graphic novel, my favorite graphic novel of the year, and it's so simple. It's just like a YA contemporary about these two boys, and they have a crush. They both have crushes on each other. And it's just so cute. It's just so cute and good and pure, and I loved it. I loved it so much. That's really all there is to say about it, but every time I think about it, my heart flutters. This is like honestly one of the best depictions of just like what it feels like to have butterflies for someone, and I feel like that is something that is so hard to get across in books. Like even books that have like so much angst struggle to like show just like what it feels like to have a crush, and how like pure and sweet that feeling can be. And I feel this book does it. It does it so well. So yeah, I don't know, I love it. If you haven't read it and you want a cute happy time, I highly recommend. Then I of course need to talk about If I Had Your Face by Frances Cha. This is a novel that follows four women living in Seoul, modern day Seoul. They all live in the same apartment complex, but different apartments. And you follow each of their lives. Each section is a different character, and through them you get a glimpse into the really intense beauty standards of Korea, along with the social class system. I found this book to be absolutely riveting. I fell totally in love with all the women that we followed, and I don't know, I loved the way that the novel was written. I loved the pacing, I loved the characters, I loved that it wasn't afraid to be dark and to explore a lot of those dark elements of society, but at the same time was also generally a hopeful novel. And I could tell that the author like had such a love for the women that she was writing, and I just loved it. I would love to see this adapted. Like it'd be so good. I feel like the closest thing I could think of to this is Hello My 20s, although Hello My 20s is definitely a lot happier. My favorite fantasy of the year was definitely N.K. Jemisin's The Fifth Season. This is a novel that takes place in a world where sort of an apocalypse type of an event happens every like 100 years or so, and there's a lot happening in this. It's a journey novel. We follow three different women, one girl, one woman in her like 20s, and one older woman in her, I want to say probably 40s maybe. I'm kind of blanking right now, but anyways, we follow those three, and they're each on a different journey. That's all I will say. That is all you should know going into this book. It is so clever. And like, I have not read a book that was plotted so cleverly in such a long time. I feel like the last book that made me feel the way that I felt reading this was The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson, and now this one. So I loved it so much. I love the characters, love the world, love the plot, everything about it. Need to read this one if you have not. And definitely I have found a new auto by author through N.K. Jemisin. So I'm really excited to read more of her work within 2021. I will talk more about those kinds of goals in an upcoming video. But yeah, I loved this one. It was so good. Every once in a while I think about it, and I just feel a lot of feelings. Next, my penultimate book, my second favorite of the entire year, was Kim Ji-young, born 1982. Listen, this was almost number one. It was close. It was a really, really tight decision, but it's second. But still, I loved this book. And this book is one that has I know will have such lasting, deep effects on me as a person. I feel like this book gave me so much more clarity into like my own history and like my own experiences even. So in this book we follow Kim Ji-young, and that name is one of the most popular names in Korea, and through her we are getting the story of every woman in Korea when it comes to sexism, from everyday sexism that you face from family members, your husband, from infancy to adulthood, to sexism in the workplace, in society, just going to a restaurant. So yeah, this book explores all of that, and it tells this woman's story. It was so captivating for me. It's also such a little book, but so powerful. What I find really fascinating about this book is that it is a work of fiction, and so it tells this woman's story, but it also is backed up by fact. Like, there are multiple citations throughout the novel that point to, like, this is not just fiction, you know, like, this is real. This is like real experiences that are widespread throughout Korea, and really backs up just all of the ideas that are shared in this novel, which I think is really necessary, because oftentimes people will read a story and they'll be like, okay, but that was fiction. And like, this novel is very adamant in the fact that, like, yes, this is fiction, but also this is very real. And I feel like those citations and those like factual moments just offer even more depth and create even more impact for what the story is trying to get across. And it doesn't, you know, I feel like that could read really dry and it could make a story very boring very easily, but in this one it just made it all the more interesting for me. And you know, I think that its brevity also helps with that, because it is so short, so it's able to be a little bit academic in some of it. So yeah, I loved this book a lot, and like I said earlier, I feel like this gave me a lot of context just for like my own life even, you know, because I think that even though obviously I did not grow up in South Korea, the traditions and the ideas that you know raised Kim Ji-young are ones that, like, as someone who grew up in a South Korean household, that I've definitely, you know, been raised into, and that was really eye-opening for me. And yeah, I love this book, and I honestly 100% would recommend this for everyone, not just Korean people. Now we are going to get to my number one favorite book of the year, which I think is honestly maybe the most underrated book of this year, and that is We Are Not Free by Tracy Chee. This book so I initially read this as a e-arc that I was given by the publisher, and I requested it completely on a whim. I was like, oh, that sounds kind of interesting. Requested it, started it one day, was like, oh, I'll just like see what this is like, and had no expectations for it, had heard nothing about it, and I just fell in love with it. So this novel follows a friend group of 14 teens who live in San Francisco, and they are all Japanese American teens, and they are put into forced incarceration by the United States, because this book is set during World War II, and it follows each of their stories. And I think about this book all the time. I think about these characters all the time. Sometimes I'll just like be sitting going about my life, and then all of a sudden I'll think about this book and I'll just like start crying because it like impacted me so like profoundly. So every single chapter is from a different character's perspective. I will say that yes, it can be hard to keep the character straight at times, but honestly, it doesn't matter. You kind of pick up, I feel like, as you go. But yeah, there's 14 different characters, each is from a different perspective, and it's sort of like that's how you follow the plot along, and they're all interconnected. And through them, you see this experience of forced incarceration that I feel like in American history is so glossed over and so softened, you know, like when we learn about it, we don't learn about the actual impact of it and the like just how horrific of an atrocity it was. I feel like people don't understand that. I feel like people don't think about this time in history as seriously and horrifically as we should, because it was truly horrific. And to also know that this is still happening in the United States, except it's happening at our borders. And the fact that that is our reality, that we haven't learned from that, and that there are people who don't see anything wrong with that, is a whole other level of atrocious. But I just feel like these voices, these characters are ones who every single person should learn about and understand and experience. Like this is a book that I wish was taught in high schools everywhere. Like I just feel like every kid growing up should read this book, because it made me understand and feel this point in time that no history book has ever been able to do. I would love to see this book adapted. I just want the world for this book. I love it so much. I've never read anything else by Tracy Chee too. I've heard amazing things about her other novels. Also, I don't know if you could tell, but I'm tearing up right now. Like I can't talk about this book, can't think about this book without crying, because it was just so good. Like I don't even know what else to say about it. It was brilliant. I loved these characters so much. I feel like they seared themselves onto my heart, and the writing was so beautiful. It was hard to read at times. It was hopeful at times. It was so good. It was so good, and my favorite book of the whole entire year. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. I think even if you don't like it, you know, even if you don't connect with characters, you don't like how many characters they are, you don't like the plot, whatever, even if you don't like any of that, I feel like you will still get something out of this book just in reading these characters' story, you know, and in reading this perspective on this point in time in US history that is just, in the way that it is taught to us, at least as Americans, is not given the justice that it deserves. So, highly recommend this one. Highly recommend all of these books. I just want the world for this one, though. So, I do definitely think this one has been underrated. I feel like I don't hear people talking about it as being like one of the big 2020 releases, but it deserves to be, you know? So I will continue to shout this one from the rooftops, I'm sure, for many, many years to come. So yeah, that is it. That is my 2020 reading and review. Those are the books I loved most, a couple of books that I disliked the most. I would love to hear from you all. What was your favorite and least favorite book of the year? Let me know in the comments down below. And yeah, Happy New Year, everyone. Bye.